Chef Lois Ellen Frank, and I'm going to show you a twist on something that's very traditional in Indian country. Most everyone loves and knows how to make fry bread. Well, I'm going to take whole wheat flour and show you my version of what is called no-fry fry bread. So we're going to start with a 100% white whole wheat flour. So it's a white wheat. Actually, wheat comes in quite a variety of colors, red and brown, white. We're going to use a white wheat. So I'm going to take some of that and I'm going to put it in the bowl. We're going to use 4 cups. And you can buy this at any store, but you want to look for something that's not bleached. We want to try and stay away from bleached flour that has some whole grain into it. And you can use any kind of wheat. Here in New Mexico, we have actually a locally grown red wheat. So any color wheat, but we do want to use the whole grain. So I'm going to mix together my 4 cups of flour, and I'm going to use a ½ a teaspoon of salt. And I prefer kosher salt or sea salt. I'm going to use baking powder, which I'm going to put in. And I'm going to make sure that these dry ingredients are really mixed together. We want to make sure that the baking powder and the salt has kind of been mixed through. So I always start with a spoon. And then I'm going to take some warm water, and we want our water to be not hot to the touch, but a little bit warm. And I'm going to pour my water in, and then I'm going to mix together that dough. I always start with a spoon, and then I'm going to use my hands. I love hands. Both my grandmas used hands. And so hands are really nice to work with dough. But you want to make sure that you remove any jewelry before actually getting your hands in after you've washed them, because jewelry tends to not be sanitary. So I'm going to mix together the flour, and you can start to see that it's going to mix together fairly nicely. And then we're going to reach a point where we really need to get in there with our hands. If you didn't or couldn't remove your jewelry, you could wear some little gloves. And what's going to happen now, it's going to reach a point where I'm actually going to need to take that dough, and I always start in the bowl. And I'm going to take my hands now, and I'm just going to mix together. Now, this is a bread dough, so you do want to get in there and you want to knead. And what we're going to do is this is going to knead for a couple of minutes. We want to make sure that we mix together all of the dry ingredients into the wet. And after I've gotten it fairly mixed, I'm actually going to put it on my, my board here. And then I'm going to get in and start to knead together that dough. And this is going to take a couple of minutes. This actually, for me, is the most relaxing because it feels really nice. It's very focused. And this is when I really bring in, I call in my ancestors, I call in my grandmas, and I ask them to be with me. And as I'm kneading that dough, it's almost like telling a story or storytelling. I really want to make sure that my thoughts are good, my intentions are good, that the secret ingredient that I'm putting into this is just the love that I have for the people I'm going to feed, and the love that I have for my family, all the love that's in my lineage. And you can see that dough just coming together, and we just bring those good thoughts in. Once we've kneaded the dough, we're going to form it into a ball. And I'm actually going to place that into the same bowl that I used, and I'm going to put it in. And then you can either use a moist towel, which I'm going to use, a nice kitchen towel here, or plastic wrap, and we're going to let that dough sit and rest, and then we're going to make our dough. Now that the dough has risen, I'm going to remove the towel, and I'm going to take our dough, and actually I'm going to put it on the cutting board. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make however many dough balls I want. So what I usually do is I go ahead and I pull apart, let's say we're going to do a dozen of these. Once I've pulled apart and made enough dough balls, I'm going to take my rolling pin, and I prefer a rolling pin that's smooth all the way through. That's just my preference, but you can use any rolling pin you want. I'm going to take a little bit of flour, just going to make sure that our cutting board is nicely floured, and I'm going to take my dough. I want to make sure that I have a little bit of flour on the rolling pin, and I'm just going to roll out this bread. And you want to make sure that it's as even as you can. And, you know, the thing about rolling dough out is that it's always going to be slightly imperfect, but the imperfections are actually a good thing because it shows you that it's hand done. And of course, some of the experts are going to do this part by hand, but I like to use a rolling pin. I'm going to turn on my flame, and you want a sort of a medium flame, and I'm going to actually take the dough, and I like mine about this big because this is about what we would use for fry bread, and I'm going to put it on my flame. Now the difference here is that instead of frying the bread, what we're going to do is we're actually going to grill it. And some people actually call this a grilled tortilla bread. And you're going to wait. The tendency is you're going to want to flip that bread before it's time. But you want to just make sure that it starts to bubble a little. And you're going to see those bubbles come up in just a minute. Now, the thing about this bread is that we're not frying it. Oh, the bubbles are starting. That's the best part. The kids love it when the bubbles start. So just like it was frying, you're actually going to see it start to have these wonderful bubbles. But what you want to remember is that we're not frying this. And this is why we call it no fry bread. See, it's starting to puff up beautifully. And as soon as that bread starts to puff up like that, perfect. We're actually going to take our tongs and we're going to just flip it over. And you can see it has a really nice color on top of the bread. And we're going to let it cook because you want now that bottom to cook. So it's about a minute, minute and a half on each side. And we want to just make sure it's nice and puffy. And then I'm going to put it in a basket and I'm going to go on to the next bread. But this bread is perfect with soups, with stews. You can actually stuff it. And remember, the Indian taco is pretty famous. And we see that at all the crafts fairs, at all the powwows, at all the different native events. Now, if you don't have a grill, a lot of my friends have used, have you ever taken a sheet that cookies can dry on? You can take that wire rack and you can actually use that on any burner. You could do it outside on your grill, but you want to make sure you can actually even do it in a flat, hot pan or on a griddle. But I think the secret here is that we're not frying it, and thus the name No Fry bread. So this bread now is perfectly done. We have another beautiful bread. Put that in our basket, and we can continue on with this process until we're done and feed our family a wonderfully non-fried, nutritious, yummy bread.